Look, let's not beat around the bush here, shall we? America has a complicated relationship with its heroes. We build statues to them, we name schools after them, we put them on money, and then, every few years, we dig up some dirt on them, tear down their statues, rename the schools, and issue new bills with slightly less problematic figures. It's a whole thing, but there's one thing we haven't quite figured out yet: what to do with our cowards. Specifically, what to do with a certain, how do I put this delicately, coward-in-chief. So tonight, we're going deep on the cowardice of Donald J. Trump. Buckle up, America. It's going to be a bumpy ride. The Vietnam War. A time of great turmoil, great change, and apparently, great discomfort for young Donald's footsies. You see, while thousands of young Americans were shipped off to fight in a war they didn't ask for, our man here was busy dodging the draft like Neo dodging bullets in the Matrix. And his weapon of choice? Bone spurs. Yes, bone spurs. Those pesky little calcium deposits that, in Trump's case, magically disappeared just in time for him to avoid serving his country. Now, I'm no doctor, but I've stubbed my toe enough times to know that bone spurs can be a real pain in the, well, you know, but they're usually not debilitating enough to keep you from, say, carrying a rifle or, I don't know, leading a nation. But hey, maybe that's just me. The thing is, Trump's bone spur diagnosis has been disputed for years. Some say it was a favor from a well-connected doctor. Others say it was a flat-out lie. We may never know the truth, but one thing's for sure. It's hard to be seen as a brave leader when you spent your youth avoiding a war that others were forced to fight. Remember the good old days of 2020? No? Well, let me refresh your memory. It was a simpler time. A time when the biggest threat to our nation wasn't a global pandemic, but rather a president who couldn't accept responsibility for, well, anything. When COVID-19 first hit our shores, Trump's response was, shall we say, less than stellar. He downplayed the virus, calling it a hoax and claiming it would magically disappear. He ignored the advice of medical experts, pushing unproven treatments and even suggesting that injecting bleach might be a good idea. And when things inevitably got worse, he did what any courageous leader would do. He blamed everyone else. China, the WHO, the Democrats, Barack Obama, the governors, the media, the guy who makes his Diet Coke runs, you name it, he blamed it. It was a truly masterful display of buck passing, the likes of which we may never see again. But here's the thing about leadership. It's not just about taking credit when things go well. It's also about taking responsibility when they don't. And on that front, Trump's performance was, to put it mildly, lacking. Now, losing an election is never fun. It's embarrassing, it's humbling, and it probably ruins your chances of getting a free Big Mac on President's Day. But for most people, it's also an opportunity to reflect, to learn from their mistakes, and to maybe, just maybe, become a better person. But for Donald Trump, losing the 2020 election was simply unacceptable. It was an affront to his ego, a stain on his perfect record of winning, or at least claiming to win. And he would not stand for it. So, what did he do? He threw a tantrum, a big orange Twitter-fueled tantrum for the ages. He claimed the election was rigged, that millions of votes were fraudulent, and that he was the rightful winner. He filed dozens of lawsuits, all of which were laughed out of court faster than a Rudy Giuliani press conference at a landscaping company. He pressured election officials to find him more votes, like some kind of desperate game show contestant trying to win a new car. It was a pathetic display, and it showed the world just how little respect he had for democracy. January 6th, 2021, a date that will live in infamy. A day when a mob of angry Trump supporters, fueled by lies and conspiracy theories, stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to overturn the results of a free and fair election. It was a dark day for American democracy, and it was a day that will forever be linked to the name Donald Trump. Now you might be thinking, John, this is a story about cowardice, not inciting an insurrection. And you'd be right. But the thing is, Trump's actions on January 6th were both cowardly and dangerous. He spent weeks whipping his supporters into a frenzy, telling them the election was stolen and that they needed to fight like hell to take back their country. He held a rally near the Capitol on January 6th, where he repeated these lies and urged his supporters to march on the Capitol building. And then, as the violence unfolded, he sat back and watched it on TV, reportedly enjoying the spectacle. He refused to call off his supporters. He resisted calls to deploy the National Guard, and he even praised the rioters as very special people. It was a stunning abdication of leadership, and it showed just how far he was willing to go to cling to power. Chapter 5. Putin's Useful Idiot. Vladimir Putin, the former KGB agent, the strongman leader of Russia, and according to some, the only person on Earth who could make Donald Trump look like a weakling. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, surely you're exaggerating. Trump was never afraid of Putin. And to that, I say, have you seen the way he looks at him? It's like he's looking into the eyes of a particularly intimidating plate of borscht. From the very beginning of his presidency, Trump seemed determined to cozy up to Putin, praising him as a strong leader, and downplaying Russia's interference in the 2016 election. He even went so far as to side with Putin over his own intelligence agencies, claiming that he believed Putin's denials about election meddling. It was a bizarre and frankly disturbing display of deference to a foreign adversary, and it left many wondering what hold Putin had over Trump. Some speculated that Trump was compromised by Russian intelligence, while others believed that he was simply in awe of Putin's authoritarian style of leadership. Whatever the explanation, one thing was clear. Trump was not the tough-talking, Putin-slaying president he had promised to be. Chapter 6. The buck stops somewhere else. One of the most consistent themes of Trump's presidency was his utter unwillingness to accept responsibility for anything. Whether it was a policy failure, a scandal, or a personal misstep, Trump always had someone else to blame. His Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, was a frequent target of his ire, as was his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. He even turned on his own Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, reportedly calling him names that would make a sailor blush. It was a revolving door of scapegoats, and it showed just how little accountability there was in the Trump administration. But the truly cowardly thing about Trump's blame game was that he never seemed to care who he hurt. He was willing to throw anyone under the bus, even his closest allies, if it meant saving his own skin. It was a masterclass in self-preservation, but it was also a testament to his utter lack of character. Chapter 7. The Correspondents' Dinner Dodger. Now, the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner is not exactly known for its hard-hitting journalism. It's a night of glitz, glamour, and awkward jokes from politicians who are usually better at giving speeches than telling punchlines. But it's also a tradition, and one that every president since Calvin Coolidge has attended. Except for Donald Trump. That's right, for 4 long years, Trump refused to attend the Correspondents' Dinner, claiming that he was too busy working for the American people. Now, I'm not saying that attending a fancy dinner is the most important part of being president, but it does take a certain amount of courage to stand in front of a room full of journalists and comedians and let them roast you alive. It shows that you're not afraid of a little self-deprecation, that you can take a joke and that you understand the importance of a free press, even when they're making fun of your hair. Trump, on the other hand, couldn't handle the heat. He was too thin-skinned, too sensitive, too afraid of being laughed at. And so, he hid away in the White House, tweeting angrily about how unfair the media was to him. It was a fitting end to a presidency defined by cowardice and insecurity. Outro: A Legacy of Yellow. So, there you have it. A brief, and by no means exhaustive, look at the cowardice of Donald J. Trump. From dodging the draft to inciting an insurrection, from cozying up to dictators to throwing his own staff under the bus, Trump has shown time and time again that he is a man who values self-preservation above all else. And that, my friends, is the true legacy of Donald J. Trump. Not the tax cuts, not the judges, not the border wall, but the cowardice, the pettiness, the utter lack of character. These are the things that will define his presidency long after he's gone. And these are the things that we, as a nation, need to learn from if we ever want to move on from this dark chapter in our history.